Hi, I'm Fred Grandy.
And I'm Jill Whelan.
And I'm Ted Lange.
And
you are
watching
Life Minute TV.
Hi guys, I'm here with three of the cast of one of the most beloved shows of all time, certainly one of my favorites, The Love Boat. Fred Grandy, Jill Whelan, and Ted Lange are here. They're starring in a new Off-Broadway show here in town, written and directed by Ted, called Lady Patriot. So good to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Nice to be had.
Thank you.
So tell us about Lady Patriot.
It's a Civil War story. It's a play I wrote a couple of years ago, and it's a true story about a young black slave girl named Mary Bowser. And there was a woman named Elizabeth Van Loo, who Jill Whelan is playing. And Elizabeth Van Loo puts the slave girl into Jeff Davis's White House.
She sends her to Philadelphia to get her educated.
Right. She puts her in the house and she's a spy. So this play examines her patriotism as a spy. It examines Elizabeth Van Loo's patriotism as a Southern lady who did not want to secede from the Union. And it examines the patriotism of Jeff Davis's wife, Varina Davis, who was the First Lady of the Confederacy. And so it's a kind of a triangulation of the point of view of who is a patriot, really.
And what about Fred's character?
I play Mary Bowser. It was
No.
No.
He's playing the only Northerner in the piece.
Well, everybody in this play has a historical precedent, except for my character, who's a journalist who writes for the New York Tribune, which was the most prominent newspaper in the country at that point, Horace Greeley's paper, and of course very anti-slavery and secession. The guy I play is essentially coming in the second act to interview prominent people, and he also works with Elizabeth Van Loo in terms of taking confidential information that Mary Bowser has pilfered from the Jefferson Davis household, and then he turns it over to the Union. Although he's not based on a real character, when I was researching the history in the play, I found there were two reporters for the Herald Tribune, both of whom not only covered the war, but were caught and imprisoned in Confederate prisons. And so I kind of based who I was on those two guys.
It's entertaining, but at the same time, it's informative, and you'll find out things you never knew about the Civil War. And that was on purpose because I dug up information. I call myself a footnote historian. And what I do is I go through books based on the time period, and I try to find things that people don't know about or might be surprised about, and then work them into the play.
I think it's interesting, too, that you kind of you do a lot of this period piece history, and you all have a little bit of, political, especially you, background. Tell us about that. Jill, you do, too. No, I find that interesting.
We never discuss politics.
Yeah, we discussed politics, and then we went, what?
Yes. Then we decided not to discuss politics.
Then we said, okay, we'll leave that alone.
The reality is he is as far to the left as I am to the right. And she just wobbles back and forth.
That is not true.
So, yeah.
Anyway, no, I think what we share is a commonality in that we are all passionate people, and we are passionate about our beliefs, and we're passionate about, our morals, and we're passionate Americans. So I think that thread runs through all of us. But the difference is we have an immense respect for each other. That trumps everything.
Trumps? You had to say it.
I did.
You had to say it.
I'm
But
so
see,
sorry.
here's the thing.
We
can talk. We can talk to each other, and like the good old days where, people used to talk to you and say, okay, well, I respectfully disagree, or yes, I respectfully disagree.
People don't respectfully disagree anymore.
No,
They come to blows almost immediately.
Yeah.
But that's what's so interesting about it, because this is very reminiscent about the time of the play, which is when politicians back during the seceding of the Union, their lives were being threatened. Today, people are being threatened with being primaried, and I think some of them's lives are being threatened as well. But it's very similar. It's like, it's a very cyclical thing. Human nature is what it is. So if you come see the play, you will see so many parallels to kind of where we are today, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
It really is. My hairs are sticking up.
Yeah.
How is he as a director?
Oh,
Impossible.
he is an actor's director for obvious reasons, but the thing about Ted that I love so much is he doesn't lead with ego as a director. You know, he's got his ideas and things when he's writing, putting things on a page. And I think, especially when you are the writer as well, you have so much ownership that when it comes to watching other people try to interpret what you're doing, I think it's probably really hard to give that baby up to a group of people and let them figure out what to do with it in their own interpretations. But he's so good at that, and he makes it a very safe place for people to be able to, as I call it, the Easter egg hunt during rehearsals, to explore and to find little moments and little things. And he's just, it's a wonderful free space to be when we work with him.
I trust them also. See, this is the thing. Because I used to direct them on Love Boat and stuff like that, I trust them implicitly. So, like, Fred comes to me and says, I have to talk to you about the script. Now, usually when an actor says that to the director, the guy goes, oh, man, oh, no. But he has good ideas. And so it layered the story so that we discovered new things. Jill found some stuff, and she called me up, hey, what do you think of this? Great idea. You know, so I'm going to take credit for it. They did the work.
Should.
Yeah, they did the work.
One of the interesting things about this trio is it's not uncommon for people who have worked together on a television show to get together periodically. It's almost unprecedented for people like us to work constantly together. This is the third show that Ted and I have. Actually, I take that back. It's the fourth show, but he's directed 3 of them. And we brought Jill in when we did I'm Not Rappaport in Michigan. We had not seen her act since she was 11. And that's something of a risk, you know, because I'm sure you've seen, not all kid actors grow up to be successful adult actors. As a matter of fact, the exception is the rule. So we brought her into the show. She was absolutely marvelous. And
they played father, daughter.
Yeah.
And they were wonderful together.
Yeah, I mean, it was a total change from her and Gavin MacLeod because she had a father who was too good to be true, and then she had a father who was too true to be good. But that ensemble is alive and well and recurs constantly. I can't think of another cast that does that.
Now, this is a limited time 12 performance run, September 6th to the 20th, so hurry and get your tickets at theaterrow.org.
Now I'm going to pitch our podcast. All right?
Okay.
I'm going to do that.
Go ahead.
We are going to be doing a podcast which Princess Cruises will sponsor and is actually produced by my son, who is second generation Love Boat. And we're going to essentially find a lot of the old people that have done the show and interview them and catch up with them and talk about some of the
their experience,
some of the experiences backstage and below decks, if you please.
Yes.
Below the waterline.
No, I mean, but that's another example of the 3 of us kind of cooperating and collaborating together.
That's fantastic. And it is beautiful. You have such a chemistry.
Well, the other problem is nobody else will work with us. So there is that.
Well, we just get along really well. I mean, I don't know of another show that lived in such tight quarters as we did when we would take cruises together. So you better figure out a way to get along. And it's been a family. We were so lucky.
Yeah, we are a family.
Yeah.
We are a family.
Still to this day.
Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with?
Yep.
Oh, constantly.
Constantly.
All of us. We loved each other.
We just did a play, the 3 of us did a play in Dexter, the one that Fred was referring to,
Yeah.
I'm Not Rappaport. We did a play in Michigan. And Lauren Twees, who played Julie McCoy, flew out and stayed with us.
She lives in Seattle.
Yeah, she
Came to
flew
see
out.
us in Michigan.
Yeah.
I have another play that I had written about George Washington, another historical play, and it had Bernie Coppell in it. So, yeah, we are united.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of a traveling repertory company now. It's evolved from just being, the cast of a hit show.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Gopher, get a haircut.
What do you think it was about that show that is so iconic? Did you know at the time, as you were doing it, how special it was going to be? Or
Not right at first. There were 3 attempts at Love Boat. two of which failed miserably. The first one, none of us were in, the first pilot.
Gosh, I don't think I knew that.
They threw out the actors and kept the boat.
Yeah.
That's what I like to say.
And then in the second one, Ted and Bernie and I were in it, but it still didn't go because they had a different captain, they had a different cruise director.
Yeah.
And then Aaron came in as the co-executive producer with this fellow Douglas Kramer, who had really conceived the show. And once that happened, I think there was a lock, because at the time ABC was known as Aaron's Broadcasting Company. And Fred Silverman, who was the president of the network, and Aaron were very tight. And so we shot a third pilot, and we were picked up almost immediately.
Well,
after
they didn't want it. They told Doug Kramer, we don't want this. And then Aaron made a phone call.
Yeah. So they did it really as a favor to Aaron Spelling, because
yes.
he was such a prolific producer for them and had all of these hits like, Charlie's Angels,
Rookies,
Starsky and Hutch and Rookies.
Mod
and,
Squad.
and so they said, we really have to do this for Aaron. And then, of course, the show almost instantaneously climbed to the top of the ratings.
Yeah, it was
And the
top
critics were
5.
stunned
Yeah, top
and,
5.
and horrified.
Yeah. Yeah. And we stayed up there for like 5 years. We were always in the top 5. And so he did have the Midas touch, because for whatever reason, he had an eye that he saw the talent and put us together.
He knew what the public wanted to see.
Yeah.
He really did have a talent for that.
And we had chemistry, and he saw the chemistry that we had. And that was amazing. That was amazing that he could do that.
My crew.
For some bizarre reason, they seem to admire you.
The only guy that really believed in the show from the outset was Gavin MacLeod. The rest of us had to be convinced, because we'd all done flops.
We had, I remember, this was before the cruise industry changed. So it used to be elderly people on a boat with their last hurrah. And so I remember Fred and I having a conversation going, nobody's going to buy this, because we looked at the reality of the situation. But our show brought in young people, beautiful people, single people, and that started to reflect itself in reality. So our show kind of changed the perception of what taking a cruise was all about.
The reason that show survives and the reason it was a hit is because it made you feel good. And there is not much television, if any, that does that now. And it sustains. It creates a kind of communal family atmosphere that people remember well into adulthood. They remember watching the show with their grandparents, or they remember watching the show with their girlfriend, or something like that.
Well, and you know what I think is, if you turn on the TV and you see just a scene, it's hard to turn away. You watch the rest of the episode. You can't help it.
I think the through line that we get from everybody when they come, and we do reunion cruises, we're doing one in November with Princess Cruises, is they all say the same thing. This was the show that I could watch with my parents or my grandparents, and we would all be riveted for different reasons. But it reminds me, as Fred was talking about, it reminds me of family, because that's what it was. And I think at the time, it started in '77, and it was just after a recession. Not everybody had
gas lines
and all of that stuff. And Jimmy Carter, and he was president at the time, and nobody could afford really to travel. And this was a form of armchair travel. We addressed the fantasies of, I think, a lot of people in this country of going to these foreign places, Egypt and China and all
Greece.
of Asia
and
Greece and Spain and France. And I think that for a lot of people, this was an opportunity to fantasize about things that are wonderful and know that at least by the end of the show, everything was going to be wrapped up in a bow and it would be a happy ending. You didn't have to think too much. it was just fun, and you got to see all of these old iconic celebrities.
And she's talking about the civilian response. These were people sitting at home and watching the show. But we've learned, just as we've started this podcast, there were a lot of people that we knew in the business. For example, Jimmy Walker, who became a huge star on Good Times. He loved to do our show because he always felt more comfortable in our ensemble than he did in his own. There's always... almost always, a lot of tension on shows that are trying to become hits, and actors, whether they will admit it or not, are competing with one another. And you have to, because sometimes you get cut from the team.
Well, and it depends. See, I remember we had a couple of people that came in like this on our show, you know, and then we would say, hey, we're doing comedy, you know, relax. Part of that came from Gavin MacLeod. Gavin was absolutely wonderful, and he taught Fred and I particularly because we weren't exactly...
We were uppity.
Yeah, we were.
We were both uppity.
Yeah.
I learned it from him, but I was uppity.
But he taught us the thing of being a gracious host, because that's what he was. And he'd been in show business longer than us, and him and Bernie came to us, sat me and Fred down and said, hey, this is how this works. You know, welcome the people on. Show them where craft service is.
Our home.
This is our
welcoming
home.
People to your home.
They're coming into your house.
And it also came from above. I mean, we did an interview with Juliet Mills, who holds the record for the most guest shots on Love Boat. And at one point, Aaron Spelling did a wonderful thing, unlimited generosity. He flew her father, John Mills, and her sister, Haley Mills, to Beverly Hills at Christmas time so they could all do a Love Boat together. He didn't have to do that, but he volunteered to do that. So when that word gets out in Hollywood and people say, wow, you want to talk about a safe space, you ought to do that show. Now, the other side of that is there was a certain amount of perhaps Hollywood snobism and contempt about our show perhaps not being quite as
hip.
As hip and as popular with the critics as, say, a MASH or a Hill Street Blues or some of the ones that usually wound up winning all the Emmys. But we were the popular hit. We became a very popular hit with the players in Hollywood as well, because when they came on our show, they knew it was a safe space, they were going to have fun, and the world was going to watch it. And every so often, they'd get a cruise.
Who were some of your favorites? There's so many.
Oh my gosh, there were over 1,000 guest stars, so it's so hard to pick.
There was that kind of feeling of regenerating yourself on this show. Yeah. And it happened a lot. Don Amici, you may not know his career, but he was a huge star in the late 40s and then just kind of disappeared. Then he wound up doing our show, and then he got Trading Places and Cocoon, and he wins an Oscar. Mary Martin, Helen Hayes.
That's what Howard Keel went to Dallas after doing our show.
Right.
Lonnie Anderson went to WKRP. Yeah. So we Tom Hanks played your friend.
Lonnie Anderson did our show before she was even a guest star.
Yeah.
I mean, she was just in the back of the crawl at the end of the show.
And then she came on as a star.
Yeah. No.
Later.
Aaron was like the Quentin Tarantino.
He was.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. We had fun.
Amazing.
I'm Captain Stubing, and this is my daughter, Vicki.
Hi, how do you do? And you were so young. You must have learned a lot from these guys.
So much from these guys. I mean, honestly, that is where I've learned any kind of comedic timing, any kind of discipline in our industry. Everything I know, I learned from these guys.
And you guys both directed a couple of them.
I didn't direct.
Right?
I wrote a bunch of them.
You wrote.
But he directed.
Well, you know what happened is we were doing the show, and I was kind of getting short shrifted in the love stories.
Getting short shrifted.
No.
Please, sir, can I have some more?
And so Fred and Bernie went to the producer and says, hey, we have an idea for a storyline for Ted. And they went, thank God. Yeah, you write it. Go ahead and write it.
Leave us alone. Go write it.
Yeah. And so they wrote a story for me.
You look nice.
I bet you say that to all the girls, you smooth-talking devil, you.
I really wanted to direct. And I had gone to the American Film Institute to study film directing. I kept going. Every year I would go, the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, I'd say, can I direct an episode? No, 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 no. And eventually it came around to the point where we renegotiated the contract. And I said, I want to direct. And I was very fortunate because they supported me. The cast, Tweez, everybody supported me. And they knew I wanted to direct. And they saw some of the other directors and they said, man, let's at least get Ted in there. I mean, come on. You know, that kicked off my directing career.
You've directed so many things. Tell us about them.
Yeah, well, you know what? I got drunk with Lee Majors in Hong Kong.
My other favorite.
Yeah, and he says, hey, we were kind of smashed. And he said, hey, you direct, don't you? I go, yeah, I direct. He said, well, why don't you direct me on Fall Guy? So that also kicked it off. But I started doing a lot of different TV shows like Mike Hammer and Fall Guy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Moesha, that's right. That was, yes, that's right.
Okay, what's your favorite way to travel?
First class.
Absolutely.
Hey, first class. Yeah.
What's something you never travel without?
I always have to travel with a book.
I never travel without creating an opportunity where I have no plan. Because I think as much as I plan a trip out, and that's a wonderful thing to do, and it's important, I think following your nose in a place that you don't really know creates so much opportunity to discover things that you never even knew you were going to find. Always leave your option open to discover something that was not originally in your agenda.
Excellent. What about you?
I always travel with more underwear than I need. I'm serious. Man, you never know what's going to happen, what kind of emergency is going to be there. So
You listened to your mother.
yes, I
Always have
did.
clean
Clean
underwear.
underwear.
That's right.
That's
Ted,
it.
what's your favorite cocktail?
White Russian, which he always gives me grief about.
He eats them before dinner. He drinks those things before
I
dinner.
love 'em.
It's like a milkshake
Is he
before you have
actually
a
a good
steak.
bartender?
No, he's a
got
certified
degree in-
bartender.
Yeah.
You really
Mixology.
did.
No, he
Yeah,
went to
yeah.
bartender school.
Yeah.
Before you did the Love Boat?
No, in the middle of, if you watch the first year of Love Boat, you can tell I knew nothing about mixing a drink because every drink was in a blender and had an umbrella. So then I went to bartending school and I learned how to free pour. I learned how to cut lemons and limes and all of that. They gave me a diploma as Isaac Washington and they gave me a diploma as Ted Lange. They said, well, you're an actor. If the gig doesn't pan out, you can always use this.
All right, Isaac, you've given a lot of advice on the show. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
I talked to Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly, in case you don't know, he was a big
Singing in the rain.
he's
singing
kind of a
in the
big
rain.
deal.
He is kind of
What a
a
big deal.
big deal. And he said, cash your check as soon as you get it.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean.
He was
'cause-
on the show, too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, he was
that's
in
where-
Hong Kong with us.
Yeah, that's where I got the advice. He was on the show. They told us, they said, Gene Kelly is kind of a grumpy guy. Don't talk to him. Leave him alone. And he and I were in Hong Kong and we're sitting on a minibus waiting to go to the set. And I said, I don't care if he is a grumpy guy. I'm going to go and talk to this guy. So I went and talked. I sat down in front of him and I said, can I ask you a question? And he was reading a magazine. Can I ask you a question? And Gene Kelly did like this. You want to ask me a question? And I go, yeah. And so I don't know. I guess he saw my enthusiasm or whatever. He said, what's the question? I said, what was it like dancing with the Nicholas brothers? And I don't think he ever got that question. He always got a singing in the rain question. And for those of you that don't know, the Nicholas brothers were two black tap dancers that were in stormy weather. And they danced with Gene Kelly. And so he gave me a wonderful story about dancing with them. And so we leave, and we go shoot our scene. And then after the scene, he says, hey, can I buy you a drink back at the hotel? That's when he started giving me show business advice. We were sitting drinking and having fun. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he
So
was
cash
cool.
your check right away.
Cash your check as soon as you get it, because you never know.
Okay. What about you, Fred? Your character gave a lot of advice on the show. What's the best advice
It was
you've
only
ever...
bad advice.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten and that you would want to give out?
Trust in the Lord and not in your own understanding.
Love advice.
My husband and me, we can just sit together on the couch and hold hands. It doesn't matter whether we're in a restaurant, it doesn't matter whether we're at home sitting on the couch. Just that time when we can be together, that's everything.
If you're comfortable in the silence,
Yeah.
that usually spells a successful relationship.
You know what I like to do is I tell my wife I love her when
You've had a
It's-
white Russian.
no, well, yeah, that is true. But I tell her when it's not an obvious moment.
Yes.
When she does something little, it doesn't have to be a good thing. Like she'll bake a potato and I'll say, hey, man, I love this. I love you. Thank you. You know, and she goes, but I just baked your potato. I know.
She unpacks his underwear after a trip.
All his underwears.
But no, I think you should tell the person you're married to when they least expect it. Tell them that you love them.
Fred, you've led a very interesting life, lost both your parents at a very young age. You went to Harvard. Who
did.
does that? And you've been a politician in the Republican Party. What came first and how did you end up acting?
I'm not sure what actually moved me into acting, except when I applied to law school, my law boards were lower than my bowling score. So that was an indication I might not want to move in that direction. I started out in improvisational theater, first in Boston and then down here in New York Off-Broadway with people like Jane Curtin and Paul Kreppel and people like that. And it just
James Woods too, right?
well, James Woods and I did a two-character play together, but that wasn't an improv. But my love for live theater, I think, grew out more of the town meetings I used to do in Iowa when I was a politician. And I would go into these little towns, 400 or 500 people, and 100 of them would show up at my town meeting and want to know what was going on in Washington. And I felt a tremendous compunction to tell them as honestly as I could what was going on and why I was doing what I was doing. They often didn't like it at all. But that was live theater. And I found much later on when I decided to get back into acting after my political career and my radio career and a couple of other things, that's what drove me back into the craft, was getting in front of people, usually without a net, and performing.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, guys.
Oh,
That's
thank
awesome.
you.
Good luck
Thank you
with
so
it.
much.
Thank you.
To hear more of this interview, visit our podcast, Life Minute TV, on iTunes and all streaming podcast platforms.